We are ready, so let's go ahead and so I'll call the town board special meeting of Tuesday, May 28th, 2025 to order. Purpose of this meeting is to discuss and possibly take action on the township finance, including 2025 budget and 2026 budget. All right, if we can all stand for a pledge of allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Right, Billy, if you can do a roll call, please.
Here.
Here.
Supervisor Olson.
Here.
Supervisor Milburn.
Here.
Supervisor Lidke.
Here. All right, let's get right into it. This is a working session. Number 4 is business. So the first discussion is 2025 budget. Who would like to lead that?
I can start. This is just kind of summary and obviously to get a couple up to speed from what and where we're at. So on that summary page there it's going to be page number 2 on that meeting packet.
The one that says levy splits?
Yep. So coming out of 2025, the meeting proposal, and at the annual meeting in 2024, it was cut. The levy was cut below the proposed by 73,250. So you'll see the items there that are cut in terms of versus what was presented. And this came before so ultimately the reason for this meeting is we didn't do this last year. I don't know what the history of how the budgets were set coming out of the annual meeting prior in terms of reallocating the dollars if they were short. So in doing this was done in February of this year, actually, on a proposal that just came before us. So is from what we've seen, is this where we want to stay? We're shorting these 2 capital funds. And ultimately we're still at least 3 capital funds. So we took 80,000 out. Wait, where are we at? Nope.
Well, apologies in advance because I'm going to probably have a lot of questions tonight, but when I'm looking at this, actual means after the levy.
Actual means what we spent in 2024.
Okay, so in 2024, we spent $5,000 in general.
Oh, that'd be a typo.
Okay,
So there's a lot of
More than
those that
that?
you're gonna see.
okay. I just wanted to make sure that it's like not reading it wrong. So I would guess that might be like 490,000.
Yeah.
Okay. So we're looking primarily at the last 2 columns, which would be what we proposed, and then the final column is the changes that the staff made.
Correct.
Okay. And capital means for large purchases like fire trucks and et cetera.
Yeah, so each department there has got capital. So road and bridge capital would be your road improvements.
Okay.
Building capital. That's that one that got cut. That would be for improvements
Okay.
to the
But not
structures.
Not maintenance.
No.
Okay.
So there was 83,000 cut out of the proposed.
And we only need to cut 73? 250?
To even out, yes.
Missed it. Where'd you get the 83 from?
Oh, I'm sorry. Nope, you're right. We're at
73.
we're at 80 total. I was reading the 3,000 for cemetery. So there's 20 in capital. That went to 0. 50 in building went to 0. 10 in recycling went to 0.
If building capital is for improvements and not maintenance, where does maintenance come out of? General? If a door breaks or,
The question again?
so if building capital is for improvements to the building, then where does maintenance come from? Like if something breaks?
Yeah, there's a operating budget, so there'll be operating dollars in maintenance, for maintenance also.
And is that not represented on this first levy splits page?
It'd be the upper, it's in that total up above. It's not broken down into line items, but for
Gotcha.
each subsection has got its own
Okay,
breakaway for maintenance, utilities, everything.
okay. So we dropped recycling, building capital, capital improvement. Would someone mind explaining what capital improvement is for?
I'm just looking at their capital improvement.
And if there's more details in a different page, I can look.
You scroll down.
Do you have an electronic copy of the spreadsheets that Alyssa had before that has all the little notes on them? Trying to find that.
Have it on my computer. They were not in here for the packet side when we met.
Spreadsheet.
Yeah, it's a spreadsheet. I think it was by color also, but it's a spreadsheet and then it had all of her numbers in it per department. But then there was little bubbles. You could hold your cursor over it and it would tell you what that amount was for, what it represented.
It was everything from motor oil, tires, stamps, gas, electric.
Well, that's where it was generated, but it's not in our packets here. 'Cause this is every meeting that we've had. thinking,
Yeah, maybe that would be in like the January budget meeting.
Might have been.
I remoted into the shared drive, so I was looking under the treasurer folder to see if I could find those reports. But you think it might be in a January packet, the town board
Well,
packet?
when we started doing our budget, when was the first budget meeting? Maybe February, first week of February, we did 3 budget meetings. Like 6, 13, 20 or something like that.
It was from February 14th. February 14th of this year. What I've got it titled as is sheets for 2/19/25 meeting.
Of all the committee sheets.
Yeah, so this is, yeah, because it's broke down fire administration. I mean, here's the fire fund, but then when it gets into the Excel spreadsheet, it's got all these little bubbles. So if you look at postage at 145, you can hold the cursor over it and it'll tell you it was 5,000 stamps and should last 3 years. So all those little notes that she put in there about each one. So this is something we should probably get the actual Excel spreadsheets out to everybody.
Is that in the town board drive?
that's what I'm trying to get to right now.
There's one that's labeled 2025 budget sheet, Alyssa's cuts. And it looks like there's no bubbles on this one, though. It's got scenarios, non-levies, overview.
You guys mind if I hop on my phone to grab a password? Is that allowed?
Yep, I just did, because you gotta get the password to get into your email.
Yeah. for asking. Can you get your email where you're at there, Billy, on that computer? I just emailed you the packet that I have, the spreadsheet. Did it come through?
It did.
Okay.
They're
Yeah.
I just got them, they're in the T drive right now.
Okay, got them over
I
there.
got the 2/19/25 and the 2/26/25.
This one's dated 2/14.
Those ones,
It's my wife to get the,
Oh,
when I
it's
signed
in
up,
there.
I didn't have a phone. I had lost it. And so I used hers to.
Go back to the T drive. You can pull up what I've got here. T drive is?
I can help her.
Oh,
I
is it-
closed on this, so I don't know if I shut down the other thing.
Oh, it's in here. It's in here now? These. should- Oh, these two XL
There you
SX.
go.
No, do I not have Excel?
Because only some of the departments were on one and some were on the other night.
Mhm.
Of course, Lisa's computer's only got it for in Sheets, not Excel. I'd be willing to go print it for her if that,
Only in-
that came through as just Sheets. So when you try to click on it, it asks if you wanted to open it in Excel. And I click yes and it won't allow it.
Yeah, mine doesn't even have Excel installed.
Good thing you took over IT last night.
It's my fault.
You
It's
get to
my
pick
fault.
it. Make a phone call now.
Do you like me to?
Yeah, we gotta get to see, but then they won't be able to hover.
To see the bubbles.
You gonna print off all of them?
Do we have other PCs in there?
There are other ones, yes.
So I would say in the interim, at a high level.
Mhm.
Is that where those cuts need to be? In terms of the projects and the needs and what was gonna happen with building capital? To wipe that down $50,000.
Sure.
Kicking those projects down the road then.
Yeah. So to back up a little bit. What do we want to achieve tonight? I mean, because we have two new supervisors, so we got to get them up to speed on this. Because we're most likely not going to solve everything tonight. So what do we want to achieve? So,
My understanding is that these cuts were made by staff and we just want to make sure that if we're okay with these cuts, then keep them, but just review it and make sure that we're representing the township with these cuts, and if we don't agree with them, then to change them.
yeah,
I guess the way to start with that would be at least for me, I like to understand there's three categories: capital improvement, building capital, recycling capital. I didn't know what those mean.
Right, well, but to back up a little bit though, so these are our capital, this is capital, but
Mhm.
are we gonna still take the 73,250 in the end out of just capital, or are we gonna do some operating or blend them?
You only take it out of capital, we're not fixing the problem that we're running into in 25. And if you don't fix the problem in 25, we're gonna be 500,000 short in 26. So by taking it all out of capital is not helping our issue.
What's the issue?
The issue is we're $76,000 short. So taking it out of capital, I had a meeting with somebody earlier today and I explained it this way. If you need to buy something at your house that you have to have, are you gonna just go buy it? Or are you gonna say, no, that's the wrong way. I don't wanna take it out of savings when we have a spending issue.
Sure.
And we have a spending issue. And if we don't fix that issue in 25, we already know what it's at 26, and it seems that it's at about $280,000. You get to 27, we're gonna be at 500,000 in a blink of an eye. So our thoughts this year was last year's thoughts by, I don't really care who, last year's thoughts were, let's just take it out of capital. That's the easiest way. Just take it out of capital. But we're not fixing the root problem here. The root problem here is a spending problem. So now we have a new spending problem of $280,000. And it was brought up early in life in the budget meetings. Let's just take it out of all our CDs. Well, then all of a sudden we're out of CDs. And in 27, we're in worse shape than we were when we dreamed of waking up in 26. Because we're not going to fix the spending issue. It's like all of our houses. If we don't have the money to spend, why would you tap into your nest egg, your savings account, just to spend that? I think we have to fix the spending issue and not just grab our capital and fix it.
Is
Because
capital like savings?
capital is a giant savings account.
Okay.
Some people don't like you saying that, but whether we like it or not, it's a savings account. Because Road and Bridge cannot come up with $500,000 for a plow truck. Parks cannot come up with 50 grand for a lawnmower. Senior Center cannot come up with 50 grand for a new stove. Fire department can't come up with $1 million for a fire truck. So we try to put money into capital. We had a resident 5 years ago. He worked his butt off on a 30-year road and bridge plan. Worked his butt off on it. He proposed it to the township by putting this much money away. In 26, you can have this, in 30, 35, 40. I mean, he did incredible amounts of work. All we had to do is stub our toe once, and you can crumple that up and throw it in the garbage. We stubbed our toe because we were short, and then you take 20,000 or 25,000 from Road and Bridge. All that work you did is right in the garbage because you stubbed your toe and you took 25 grand out when you weren't supposed to take it. So in parks, it is super easy to go to parks and take 10 grand from it. Super easy. We can all do that right now. But as soon as they need a lawnmower and you don't have 10 grand for lawnmower, then you're searching somewhere else. Then you're going to general capital. Road and Bridge, if they blow up a plow truck,
Mhm.
we're gonna get 2 feet of snow next week. We need a $250,000 plow truck. Well, but we took 50 grand out of their capital last year to fix this little hiccup. We don't have the money.
Quick question. Does capital grow? Like, is it in investments?
Capital will grow every February because we'll try to put 5, 10, 20. I know Road and Bridge has tried to put 300, 400, 500,000 into road projects in the future.
But it's just savings, or does it grow?
You
Is
can
it
carry it
interest?
over.
Is there any interest or
No.
investments going on? Okay, so it's
I'm gonna
just
say no on that.
savings.
Because I think our only investments are the CDs.
Okay,
So all this money does is rolls over and into next year's money.
got it.
So it is savings. Some people don't like us saving their money, but we don't have a choice on some things. Fire trucks, plow trucks, lawnmowers, stoves. We don't have a choice because we can't just drop 100 grand in a blink of an eye. So we try to save, and you'll see that by all these things. That's why I hate taking out of savings if we have a spending issue.
Is the township in debt?
No,
Does it have the ability to go into?
we,
debt?
we have no capital we have no
Bonds or anything.
bonds, thank you.
So if it came down to it and we didn't have enough money and the roads needed to get plowed, would we ever be in a position where we might have to take out debt?
Roads being plowed, no. Never, because you stop everything except public safety.
Okay.
Where you close the senior center doors, you close the parks and you make public safety a number one priority. That's what you do. We have bonded for fire trucks before.
Okay.
We did, I think the last one, or the one before the last, 2 fire trucks ago, I think we bonded for one. But again, sometimes it's really hard to come up with $800,000, $1 million. This year we used that ARPA money, which helped us out a lot. But if we got a spending issue, why empty our savings? Nobody here can survive in their own house. If, oh, I spend too much money, so let's empty our savings and buy that cool go-kart we wanted at Costco. We do, I think as this board, we can't do that. We have to, if the people told us, you gotta cut 70 grand off the budget. We didn't cut 70 grand or 76 grand. We didn't do a damn thing.
Didn't cut it out of. So
We
can
did
I-
nothing.
Can I rephrase what you're saying?
Yes,
So
sir.
you can tell me if I'm right. Capital is these kind of like one-time costs for these big projects. And these other categories are recurring costs year after year. So if we don't have enough money to take it out of capital, like you're saying, doesn't solve the problem because capital is not a recurring cost. It's
If we don't have enough operating, why take it out of capital?
like we have, you're saying that our recurring year-to-year costs are so high that taking it out of capital is just delaying the problem.
It's 100% what I agree on.
Okay.
I agree exactly what you said.
Okay.
I'm only one person on the board, but I agree exactly what you said.
Anybody disagree? I don't know. I'm just asking.
Yeah. I think so. The way I look at it is, if we know that, kind of piggybacking on Bob, let's say that we know that a lawnmower that we buy and we use every year
Mhm.
has a life expectancy of 10 years.
Yes.
Okay, so we know that every 10 years, we're gonna have to replace that. And let's say it's $100,000 every time we replace it.
Mhm.
What we'd want to do is budget $10,000 every year into a capital for that area each year for 10 years, so that at the end of 10 years, when we have to replace, we got 100,000 in there.
Okay.
So you could use it, you could say it's a savings account, but it's where we're placing money in there knowing that we have a purpose for it down the line.
So then my next question, and this may be in the packet, so just point me to the right spot, but what is coming down the pipeline that we've been putting money towards in these capital funds that we no longer have?
How old are both our trucks? 14 and 15?
Yeah, I think 15 and 16, yeah.
Okay, so they're 10 years old. Our lawnmowers are at least 10 years old.
Trucks for what?
Plow
Plowing?
trucks.
Plowing.
Uh,
And we got the 1 ton that's been on the list for a long time.
a big one that came up was FCBA's. I mean, that was huge across the street for their air tanks. That was huge. That was 150 grand for all new FCBA's. Can't remember what that cost was, but some things you can't control. I know we've talked numerous times about different ways of using our money towards our plow trucks. Cause unfortunately, our trucks rot from basically not being used enough. I mean, we'll have a 30-year-old truck and it doesn't have 25,000 miles on it. And I know the fire department deals with the same thing. Our trucks are 30 years old, but they have no miles on it, but they just start to nickel and dime us to death. Stoves in the senior center should last 20 years. So we try to prepare, put $1,000 here, $1,000 there, but there's just some things you just never know what's gonna happen. Just like at all our houses, you just never know what's gonna happen.
So then if let's say right now, we figure out a way to reverse the capital cuts, and I'm not saying that that's what we should do, but if we did, would that put us back on track for these expenses, or have there been capital cuts in the past that already put us off track?
The latter.
Okay, so before these cuts, we were already dipping out of that in ways that maybe we shouldn't have.
There's always some funds that get dipped more than others.
Okay.
Talk to the park committee. There's always number one,
They dip the most?
always number one. If there's a cut, that's where it goes.
Oh, they're the ones who get cut from.
Always. always,
And that would,
never fails.
in the context of parks, that would be towards cutting grass, like lawn.
You know what?
mowers.
It'd be towards if they wanted to put gravel on a park this year. We gotta cut you 10 grand. You're not putting any gravel on this year.
Does lawnmowers come out of parks?
Lawnmowers does, but not out of their operating.
It comes out of their capital?
Yes, sir. Senior center will always get cut. Again, it's the public safety.
Mhm.
If you're not, I'm not saying it's not important. I'll never say that, but it's just what we have to have compared to what we want to have.
Sure.
And a specific item may be split between multiple capital accounts. So, an example would be if you want to use lawnmower, it gets used for cutting parks. And it gets used for cutting township property. Not, this area out back here is not a park. It's township property. So, therefore you might take 90% from parks and 10% from, your building capital. So if it's the truck or what was it? You had a good one, tractor. I think it was replacing the tractor.
Yep.
Tractor might be used by recycling. It might be used by public works. Might be used by parks. So then it may be split between 3 capital accounts.
Okay. So then based on what I'm hearing, it sounds like we don't want to cut capital. Is there a reason why we would want to cut capital?
Only if we don't have enough operating, but that's, see, in operating, there's, you're estimating what you may spend based on past years and what you're gonna be confronted with in the next year. So you're taking a couple factors into account there. But we might, if you look at the actuals,
Mhm.
all of a sudden you say, okay, well, we spent $65,000. If you look like, let's use let's use police.
Okay.
Police was actual in 2021 was 200,000. And all of a sudden in 22 BAM, it went up $148,000.
Then down to 250, then up to 316, then down to 300. So
Right, so what we may be doing is we may budget for a safe number.
Mhm.
So we might budget for, let's say, 315 was the worst case scenario there. So maybe we would have budgeted for 330, knowing that there might be a 6% increase or something.
Okay.
It's a guess, right? Well, then let's say that it doesn't come in with that. We can move those capital dollars if we know we're not gonna use them
Mhm.
to another capital fund.
okay, so from what I'm hearing, it sounds like that just taking from capital is kicking the can down the road because there will come a time where there's no capital left and then all there is left to cut is these recurring costs.
You're gonna need to replace something that has a 10-year replacement cycle,
Mhm.
and you're not gonna have the money then. Because you're not putting it in that little savings account, like Bob said, periodically throughout that time.
Mhm.
And eventually you're gonna get to that point that it's gonna have to be replaced.
So I mean, what I'm saying is like, I'm not hearing anybody say, like, I haven't heard anybody make a case for actually cutting from capital. Everything I'm hearing so far sounds like, no, we shouldn't do that. Is there a reason? Would anybody advocate for that we should be cutting from capital? I'm sure there's another side to it. I mean,
Within reason. So if there's a planned project and costs are gonna go up every year. So if you don't pull that trigger at a certain point on these projects, they're only gonna get more expensive.
but wouldn't that be a case for not cutting capital?
Correct, but in terms of what projects are we looking at? We're looking at everything?
Mhm.
Or the ones that are gonna be most susceptible to a higher cost? Or ones that haven't been looked at in terms of what they can be shared across? That's, from what I've seen, it does seem to be very siloed in that approach in terms of how we can look at sharing across things. You talk about the tractor. Is the tractor best served for one entity? Maybe. But if it was a skid steer and now all of a sudden that opens up an avenue for Public Works
Mhm.
to do something, well then that's sharing the cost and it's getting more impact and more bang for the buck for the residents if that machine is moving more.
We downgrade from a tractor to a skid steer, you're saying?
Yeah.
So it's like, then what I'm hearing is if we do choose to cut capital, that has to come with cutting plans for future purchases, right? So we could cut capital and say, we're gonna buy a skid steer instead of a tractor when the tractor blows up. Not saying that's the right thing to do, but that would be like, if you're looking at this like logically, that seems like,
And a lot of it too is we're doing this so early in the year. I mean, we're locking in, I mean, we locked 26 in March of 25. Anyone here can tell me where we're gonna be in October with some of these prices that we're gonna be. That fixes it, but we're not there. So it's one big guess, you know. But yeah, to me, having a plan of what the spend needs to be for the day-to-day and what are our projects. So if we had money in this and then something changed, what changed in the plan? You know, to the road bridge plan, that should be written in stone already. This is the 3 roads we're planning to do. And okay, now this one got taken care of. Go to the next one and understand that. Same thing with, you know, parking lots, everything else we've got. Sooner or later, what's going to be the most impactful for us?
So Bob, do you remember in the past, didn't we work through our operating budget first and then our capital?
We always did the operating budget and then the capital was the last, it was like the icing on the cake. You did your operating budget, but again, when we did the operating budget before, if it came in and we were at a loss, it went right back to the committees. You gotta cut 10%. Cut 10 grand. 10 grand, cut 5 grand, cut 20 grand. Somehow you have to.
and I guess what does operating budget mean? I mean, people's salaries. What else?
These lights.
Lights, okay, lights gotta stay on.
Utilities, fuel costs.
Okay, so let's go. Are you on, is he in the same?
So I don't
Same
have
thing on
Excel
here?
on, I don't have Excel on either of these computers.
Okay, so I'm just gonna use something. I'm on Parks right now.
Okay.
John helped me do this, or Andy did. Somebody did. I sure didn't do it here. So for 26, Park has, they gotta raise it they gotta raise it $2,500. Can't predict if we'll have a mower. So they wanna raise the operating supplies for motor fuels, cause we can't predict if we have mowers for gas. Raising $100 for oil for mowers, raising $500 for weed killer, driver bits for playground equipment and bolts. Okay, save $500, don't kill the weeds. Okay, $2,500 for lawnmower parts, $1,000 for tires. Exterior lights, locks and keys, 500, $5 grand for mulch. Okay, Parks, we have to take $5 grand from you, so you're not getting mulch for any parks.
You're going through Parks V1, which is our operating, right?
Yes, sir, right here. Yeah. $5 grand signs or 500 signs for the warming house, totes for the parks, water bottles, frisbees, $3,000 church. There's your operating.
Okay, so $5 grand for mulch. Don't we have mulch in the recycling center?
It's not playground mulch.
Yeah, but
Ah, okay,
playground
yeah,
mulch is
okay.
ADA mulch and you
Gotcha.
don't mess with that.
Yep, okay.
A great question though. Great question. And you can go to every one of these. Every one of these has the same thing. We had to raise the outhouses, $800 for the outhouses because the price increased by $5 a park. Now it's pocket change, but you remove the portable bathrooms from the less used parks. Keep them on our bigger parks, but not the smaller parks. I don't know. It's saving $300,000, $400,000, $500,000. I mean, in my mind, you gotta start small to save anything.
Wait, hold on. It's $300,000 to have those porta potties?
No, but I'm saying it's $5,000 a year to have them.
Okay,
And I'm gonna guess and say they're in 8 parks,
Okay.
including the school forest.
and
We
that's
go-
operating.
If we go down to 4 parks, that cuts that down to $2,500. That's just a guess. But I mean, that's a way to cut that $2,500. And again, you tell Parks, you somehow have to save, you gotta cut $5,000, you gotta cut 10 grand. How are you gonna do it? Parks has to go through this and say, I guess we gotta pull the bathrooms from 4 of our parks to save $2,000. And there, I mean, there's always a way to cut something.
And we,
Always.
we would leave that up to Parks to make that decision.
Parks brings it to the board and says, here's what we'll do. Here's what we believe we can do. We can drop it down to this number by cutting this stuff, and then the board agrees on it, yes or no.
Okay, so we wouldn't be like, you guys gotta cut porta potties. We would go,
We
You
need
guys
you to
gotta cut
cut your
something.
budget 10 grand.
okay,
And we'd say the same thing to seniors, say the same thing to road and bridge, fire. Some of it gotta make up over $200,000, and I just think we really have to, we're gonna need help from our committees.
okay. So are we taking the angle then that we're gonna be looking at operating costs instead of capital? All I've heard so far is
I'm
things
one
in
guy.
favor of that.
I think if it goes back to the committees, they look at both of them. They look at operating, then they look at their capital. Because both of them affect our overall budget.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah, but I agree, because if I was a committee member, I wouldn't want the board necessarily to tell me where we have to cut. If I have an opportunity
That's why they're
to,
there.
they're gonna know
That's
better.
why they're
Yeah,
there. There's
and-
one.
and if they
there's
can't
one
get
homework.
there, then we'll have to figure that
Yeah.
out. But
Okay,
I would say that give the committees a fair shot at figuring that budget out first.
okay. So then you're saying it's not even really up to us of capital versus operating, that's down to the committees themselves.
Well, we'd get their insight, we'd let
Sure.
them go through it first and figure out where that's at and then give us their feedback. Ultimately, it's the board's decision.
And these current cuts to the capital, I'm imagining, did not come from committees, it came from. I've heard that it
Came from the
staff.
office.
Yeah.
Office staff.
So I would say, if I was on the Parks Committee and I need a mower, it sounds like they might not want to cut their capital. But I guess it would be up to them.
Well, or the
Sure.
board says we have to
Sure.
have X, each department has to figure out where they're gonna cut out X%.
Okay.
In order to get us down to that number. But we're dealing with two different things now too, because
Okay.
we're trying to correct the 2025.
Mhm.
So even though we're in the middle of the year, we're trying to figure out where do we really want that 73,250 to come from? So there's that part of it, and then there's the question of what are we gonna do for 26?
So that's the bigger time bomb in terms of, 280 grand.
That's what I think.
Yeah, well, total, but so 73,250 out of the 25 budget. And then we've got to cut, I think it's 184,600 out of the 26 budget.
Oh, 184,600.
Yes.
I didn't have a solid number.
Oh, gotcha. Okay. So 184K. I'll just write that down.
In the 25, it's kind of in the board's hand, because all spending has to go through the board anyways. So if senior center comes up and says, we're gonna buy all new tables for $10,000 this year. Well, after going over all our numbers for this year, we cannot afford to buy them this year. So right there possibly saved us 10 grand. And I think that's gonna have to be done with all of them.
Okay.
And keep in mind too, there's always something that comes up that's unexpected.
Yep.
Always.
Last year
That's what
was,
capital's for?
well, it depends on what the expense is.
Okay.
If something breaks and we have to replace it with something new, it would come out of capital.
Okay.
If it's something that,
Next year, compressor
if it's
was-
something that we use, let's say that, Blacktop Road went to hell because somebody spilled something out or hit it with something. If we had to do something there, it may be operating because it's repairing it.
Okay.
But last year was what, the well for the
Fire
well for the
department.
fire department, that was what, 12 grand, 14 grand? We didn't have that budgeted. And so that had to come out of capital, but if buildings capital didn't have enough, then we sometimes have to shift some numbers around and get it from someplace else.
Okay.
So throughout the year, where the board is constantly trying to massage and make the budget fit. So sometimes we have to give some work in one area and we have to take from another and shorten it a little bit and try to make up for it for the next year.
Okay.
On emergencies, park capital is only good for park. On an emergency, general capital is good for the whole township. General capital can be used for everything in the township. Park capital can only be used for parks.
And that's like legally binding, like we can't change. Well, if we can't change it, then what are we doing tonight?
We can change it.
We can change it.
Well, yeah, but all I'm saying is I can't take 20,000 from parks to buy new hoses for the fire department.
You'd have to first change the budget and then, okay, gotcha, okay.
Remember when you asked the question in the meet the candidates thing out there?
Mhm.
When we were picking and you asked the question?
Mhm.
I kind of explained this that
Yep.
day.
Mhm.
It's. Cause you gotta think about 5,400 people.
Mhm.
You don't think about Sam and Bob and Mike and Andy and Lisa and
Mhm.
John. You gotta think about 5,400 people.
Mhm.
Nobody in the world wants to cut 10 grand from parks. I don't think I wanna cut 10 grand from parks anyways, but if you have to,
If
You
it's
have to.
between parks and public safety,
the difference between cutting your grass with a $10,000 lawnmower or cutting it with a push mower. Do you have to? Can you save money somehow? We save it somehow.
so where do we start?
How much money did you bring tonight? I left my wallet at home. I knew what we were talking about.
Well, these are good questions, because I mean, everybody has to be on the same wavelength as understanding how this all functions, so
Yeah.
anytime that you got questions, it's,
I'll have more.
that first year was a struggle for me, and I've done a lot of budgeting and stuff, so I understand capital versus operating and all that kind of stuff. And it was still a challenge to get a handle on how this works in the government.
I think the 25 we can handle. I don't think we. I mean, was it ever in stone that it all comes out of capital for 25? Was that ever set in stone? Or was that just the thought the office had, we'll just pull out of those capitals, we're done?
It was in February, set in stone. I mean, we approved it because we had to move forward.
But we're still in charge of the, of how
Like,
money
to that
gets
point, if
spent.
something gets changed and gets reevaluated, that's,
What is everybody's thought about taking everybody's budget proposals for their committees, sending it back to them and saying, come back to the first meeting in August with your changes?
I think we need to do it before that.
Well, we're almost to June, so fire department has one meeting in June. Well, everybody has a meeting in June. Then bring it back to first meeting in July. We need cuts, we need 10% from everybody.
Well, do we want to do 10% from everybody, or do we want to look at these things like this is a priority and this isn't a priority and weight it that way? Would it be fair to cut 10 grand equally from public safety and parks? It also, I think, has to do with like, is there fluff anywhere, which I don't know. And that's probably a really touchy subject. But to me, I think a flat 10 grand across the board seems overly simplistic.
Well, that's only gonna cover a third of what we need though.
Yeah.
well, yeah, when you look at the holistic, who covers a percentage of each, but you know, the overall budget, not everyone carries the same
No,
weight in the bucket of water.
but you hate to cut 50,000 from road and bridge because all you're doing is stealing from the future from them.
Mhm.
I mean, you hate to just attack them.
Yeah, so I don't think it should be a flat percent either. It should probably be, in my mind, if I was coming at this totally naively, look at them, what's most important, and what's most important gets cut the least. And what's least important gets cut the most.
But Parks has a total different agreement. What's more important than the senior center? You ask them to, what's the most important thing in the township?
Yeah, so I think it's up to us to decide what's most important.
Based on input.
And then
That's what didn't happen here. We didn't get that input back from each
Then-
department committee to know what the impacts are. Just seeing black and white here, it might make it easier, but if you don't know that by not doing this, the impact of this,
And
And-
that's what I would expect them to explain when they come back,
Correct.
like, we could cut this, but this will be the impact and.
and that's really what it's about, is that education piece to all. I mean, at the end of the day, this is all of our town. What's most important to people? You know, I've heard it every which way. And what's important to one isn't to another, but it's, you know, majority has to be driving this. And if we have to look at how we operate, I mean, there's definitely rooms for improvement.
Now that we're talking about August, I should probably bring up, I'm having a baby boy in mid-August. So if we postpone this discussion to the middle of August, that's not gonna work very well. I could make it happen if it's the only way, but I would like to address it sooner if possible.
Absolutely. I don't see this going that long.
Okay.
I don't.
Mm-mm.
It needs to be addressed. To that point, everybody's meeting here in this month.
We're gonna do it the first meeting in July then.
Yeah, so like Road and Bridge meets next Tuesday. So next Tuesday, I'll get all the road and bridge stuff ready. And again, it's operating and capital, but for 25 and 26.
But it should have a capital plan associated with it. Like, these are the 3 roads, and this is why, like, to your point, in 5 years, we want to do this road. And we're anticipating this amount, which we can guesstimate with the engineer, whatever, based on so much percentage increase a year. That we need to now be saving this much in the preceding years. And then hold that plan as best we can. Obviously, if something completely, a road washes out, that now went to the top of the list.
Or if the parking lot in front of the senior center just sinks and vanishes. Cause I seen it tonight, somebody in this boardroom with me has a bet. I think it's 12 inches, she only thinks it's 8 inches low. Oh my goodness. Yeah,
Both of our parking lots, there you go.
man, it is crazy.
So whatever happened with, we had a board, whatever, what was the results for that? Was it, didn't we have a sample of the parking lots last
was-
year?
We can't talk about that,
Okay,
Why can't we?
cause we're in a budget meeting.
Okay, so we have to stick to,
Unless we were talking about cost.
Yeah, if you talk about the cost of it.
Okay.
Okay. Why didn't we spend $100,000 fixed parking lot? Cause we're 200,000 short on everything else.
the audience allowed to.
Yeah, that was my question.
Yeah, if it's short, we'll allow it. But yeah, it's mainly for the board to try to figure out the budget stuff, but if it's budget related. If it's budget related and not the or the parking lot related, yeah, you can step up for a minute, please. Yep. Push the switch up. There you go.
Brian Langlois, 6360 232nd Avenue. With respect to the budget, Sam, I heard your question. I think you, as board members, going to the committees, you can do, let's call it a red line of their budgets and say, look at these areas. We think that these are the areas you should focus on. Let them make the determination. And having a percentage cut, it does make more sense than across the board setting a dollar amount for each. But then again, I don't have the budget in front of me. I haven't looked at each. Are we overspending in some areas that maybe we should be doing cutbacks? And state's doing it. Everybody's going to have to do it. We're doing it in our families. I think they all need to go back and look at their budgets, look at their operation expenses. If it means losing staff, if the staff is not required and you're meeting the minimum requirements with respect to safety and function, so be it. I mean, I've watched Polaris go through it for the last 2 years. I think we have to be real about this. The other option I brought up at the, was it February meeting? Is the other option for you long-term is raise revenue. There's been some discussion about revenue. Senior housing was also raised. Now, that's a means of raising revenue. You add 50 units, 50 families, additional. You can't build 50 homes in this community as fast as you can put up 50 units in this, near this center. So that raising revenue is how you build the ability to build up that savings account. So those things should be considered, and fast tracking, looking at those kinds of plans and fast tracking revenue streams is probably a better idea than just chopping this every year, because you watch the people come here and just chop that budget. If you get more people putting up the money, you'll have a bigger budget to work with in the years to come.
So the levy is one aspect to revenue. And the pattern seems to be the levy keeps getting rejected to be lower than what we request. Do we pull in any other revenue besides the levy?
Yeah,
Like grants.
Negligible or?
well, road, I think Billy would answer the question more than I do. I don't know where all the money comes from, wheelage tax or gas tax or.
82% of our revenue is taxes.
Okay.
When you think about it overall, you're gonna get really minor stuff from licenses and permits. You know, your dog license costs you $2. It's a lot of dogs to make up, and we lose about $5 on every license. So
What did our commissioner thought we got off speeding tickets? 40 grand? And we really got $210?
yeah.
Wait, what?
Supposed to get money from speeding tickets? in
We
the
only got
township?
$200 instead of 40 grand.
The county commissioner assumed Linwood Township got upwards of 40 grand.
Oh, like he just thought.
He was told we got $210 last year. His head almost spun off his body when he looked at the sheriff. He was a little stunned.
Whose job is it to look for grants? Anybody in particular? Boards?
We have a grant. We have a contract with her, a grant writer,
Okay.
As needed.
as needed. Problem is the new big shot in that White House in Washington. He eliminated a lot of federal stuff, so there's not nearly as much. Because when we got this grant writer, she said, I can go for $100,000 grant, and then I can go for another grant to cover your portion that you would have to come up with to get that 100 grand. She said, now that doesn't exist anymore.
Okay.
So
So-
there's grants, I'm sure there's grants out there, but
But probably not realistic to rely on that to fix this completely.
you can't rely on something that's like pulling the slot machine.
Sure.
And that's what the grant writer is all about.
And
Have we used her in anything yet?
Yeah.
We have? Successful? And she's a professional, that's her job.
like, I'm all for making more money for the township, but
You gotta have money to make money. And
Yeah.
and she wasn't super expensive, maybe what, 150 an hour? But
Yeah, she's not that bad. But the other thing too is that you gotta be careful because per statute, townships aren't a business, so we're not,
yeah,
so,
speaking loosely.
yeah, so, yeah. Exactly.
Qualifications are that's rigorous.
Sure.
We want you to depend mostly on the taxpayer.
so my eighth grade math supervisor Cole,
Mhm.
you cut each committee 10%, that's $185,000.
That's what we're short for 2026.
Very close,
I would say that might be a good starting point.
eighth grade math.
That might be a good starting point, but I'd probably start from there and then maybe 8% there,
You're right.
12%
You're
somewhere
right, you're
else.
exactly right.
Okay.
Twenty 2025 have committees, departments re-summarize, reevaluate their original proposal.
I think we start there. We get the spreadsheet or 2 spreadsheets out to all the board members.
This is it.
So we can, because the bubbles will explain more than we can here at the meeting. But then I think everybody needs to spend some time.
Yeah.
Going through it, and it's a lot. It's a lot to take in, but get familiarized with that. And then we'll go back to each one of our committees and departments.
Okay, so we'll be in charge of going to our own committees with what we think.
Yeah, yes.
That won't be a board decision for me to go to IT and say we gotta cut 10%. That would just be my decision,
With IT, yeah.
just as an example.
We can talk about it because most of the IT stuff right now is coming out of communications. So like if you need to replace,
Want to explain communications to them?
nope.
It's not tax money. You see that huge tower out there?
Yep.
They pay us every single month, every single year for, I think we had a 25-year contract.
Mhm.
That's communication money. The sign out on, by the school,
Mhm.
that money came out of communication money. It's not taxpayer money.
But it's still, that's part of the township revenue.
Yes, sir. But it's not tax, yeah. You are exactly correct.
Does that distinction matter in the grand scheme of things if it's tax money versus not tax money? Is there legal stuff around what we can use it for?
Communication, yes. Communication can only be used on communication.
Oh, okay.
That's why we get so many computers. Can only be used on communication.
What is communications in the most broad sense? What does that mean? Like, what can we spend it on? So computers, I guess, is part of that.
The signs, that sign out on the highway,
Okay.
this sign right here,
Okay, phones, I guess.
phones. I don't know if any goes across the street with their
Website?
stuff or not, but what's that?
Website?
Yeah, I'm sure website.
Yeah, to me, it's communicating with the public.
Yep.
Okay.
Believe it or not, there's still a
Advertising.
cable. We still get cable money. I didn't know cable even existed anymore, but we still get cable money.
I barely know what cable is.
Well,
But yeah, because there's departments that have not seen it circle back or never got a loop closed.
Right.
In terms of where this ended, unless they were watching the meeting. So I think that's only fair. That they have some input and
Mhm.
information to push forward. In terms of cut capital, this is a far out plan, or, yeah, we could probably reduce operating by this much on this if this, and then understand that impact. Cause then you have to communicate that to the residents, because it's gonna shake out one way or another for whether it's geographic in the town, demographics of people, generational with who uses what. It's,
Yeah.
it all,
So we got some areas here. So road, if we look at the list, the levy splits.
Mhm.
I don't know if this is a complete list or not. I don't think it is, but because police I don't see on here, so it's not, oh, it is there. So if we looked at this like road and bridge, so I'll work with road and bridge. And Lisa has fire. We just go through this by our committee assignments. Lisa has police. And I know some of these have multiple people. Senior transportation, that's you and Bob, right? Okay, so Andy and Bob. Cemetery is Bob and Lisa. Parks and Rec is Lisa and Sam, right?
What was that?
Parks and Rec.
Yeah.
And recycling is Andy and Lisa. Let's skip capital improvement for now. Road and bridge capital would be me. Building capital, that's Bob and Andy. Fire capital is Lisa. Recycle capital is Andy and Lisa. Park dedications, Lisa.
Am I included on the road and bridge? Is that part of?
Oh, yes, thank you, Sam.
Okay, that's part
Let's
of
get you on
Public
there.
Works.
It is.
Okay.
It's the committee from it, but
Okay,
yeah, let's get you on that one too.
we should just change the name.
Yes. Yeah, we'll do that in an upcoming meeting. What else are we missing for departments? Any idea? We got senior.
senior centers, parks, police,
Cemetery.
cemetery.
Cemetery's not in, oh, there it is, yeah.
I'm not seeing communications on this list. Is that general?
Yeah, it's buried in the general fund.
Okay,
And then I would say, the board probably working on general and capital improvement. What do you guys think?
Yep.
We'll go through that together. All right. Anything else you guys can think of? I can't find any more. All right. So that kind of gives us a list of responsibility. At least I know you got a couple by yourself if you want help, being that it's your, especially your first year.
Yeah,
You let me know if you want, or pick anybody. I'm not offended.
I was thinking maybe we'll meet, we can meet with, the police. Maybe drive down there and see if they can come out here.
Sure.
And then I know we had a meeting before, so hopefully we can figure something out for this year too. I mean,
Um, did you want to, or you want me to explain kind of what we found out with the police as far as reduction?
so
Possible.
we met with them, and if we went from 8 hours to 6 hours, we could save $80,000. It was like another 4,000, I believe it was, if they were not replaced, if they had vacation or sick time.
Another 40,000. Yeah.
So what would that mean? Just like if they go on vacation, we don't have a police officer?
Yeah, but for townships, the Anoka County is supposed to support us. And to where the cities, they don't have to support them, but townships, they do have to. So it would be back in the day before all the cities, it might take them 15, 20 minutes to get up here.
So that we would just be dealing with slower response times and
Yeah.
for emergencies, and I would imagine maybe they're not patrolling for speeding.
Well, I'm sure they'll still be patrolling for speeding.
That would be if we totally canceled. If we totally canceled, then they're not, they'll still patrol Linwood. They're
Mhm.
just not gonna have a dedicated person here for the hours that we set.
Okay,
So right now we have them working 8 hours a day during a set period of time.
Okay.
7 days a week, so 365 days a year. If right now they're doing 8 hours, if we drop them to 6 hours, that's where they would reduce our rate by $80,000.
it's quite a bit, but what everybody said so far is you can't cut public safety.
Well, but we're not,
It's not high on the cut list.
right?
Sure. But it's
And-
also very expensive.
Yeah, the only thing is it's no different. Those extra 2 hours that we just dropped, going from 8 to 6, it's no different than the other 16 hours of the day that we don't have anybody here anyway. They're still coming on calls. If there's a burglary, they come out, they write the report and everything. So it's not that we don't have their service. We just don't have a person dedicated to driving our roads during that time.
Is that schedule secret?
Yeah, kind of.
Okay.
Yeah, we don't advertise it because otherwise all the activity would happen outside of those times.
Yeah.
That's what I'd speak.
Yeah. That's right.
Never speed.
So that would be one option that we can look at. So you can kind of put that in the back of your mind that that is 80 there, and the 40 is that Lisa was talking about. It kind of confuses me a little bit because it's like we're paying for a person to be here in the township during a certain hours.
Yeah,
And if they go on vacation,
sounds like we're paying for that.
we're paying for their vacation time. So basically what we're doing is, if you figure, loaded cost is about 40% over your salary.
Mhm.
Okay, for an employee. So we're basically paying the loaded cost for an employee. We're not just paying for the hours of the employee, we're paying the loaded value. So that's your sick time, that's your vacation time, that's all the expenses that go along with it.
We're paying the coverage. So we have a sheriff deputy,
Mhm.
but we pay for 1.68 in terms of the formula to cover that vacation. So to that point, you're saying we'd go to the 6 hours. It's still 7 days a week, 365. You go down to that extra 40K and you drop you're at 6 hours, but you drop the 365 coverage because now when they're out, they're out. Correct? Is that, okay.
Right. Which still doesn't make sense, because to me, you're paying for hours.
Yeah, it's
Yeah, it's
strange,
person, but-
complex.
Mhm. So anyhow, there's a couple options that we can look at. There's some figures there. So that way we don't drop police coverage. It's just that we're changing it up a little bit.
From what I'm hearing, it sounds like it would be a bad choice to go from 8 to 6 hours, but continue to pay that full coverage. Right?
Well, we wouldn't be paying for the 8 hours anymore. That's why we're gonna save the 80 grand. It's taking out 2 hours of
We
pay.
would still have a cop or a
Yeah.
police officer that would be, because they have to support Linwood Township no matter what.
No, let me rephrase. So what I mean is 8 hours is like a full-time employee, right? And 40% of their salary is like the extra overhead costs of when they take vacation. If we drop that 8 hours to 6, we are now paying for less than a full-time, but continuing to pay the full amount for that overhead of their vacation time.
That's what they said they'll waive.
Oh, they'll waive it.
The only difference is though, is that normally right now, if there's an 8 hour period and their normal deputy is gonna be on vacation this week,
Mhm.
they take one of their other officers and sends them up here. So we still have the 8 hours coverage, but then we're also paying the second deputy's vacation time is essentially how that ends up working.
So if we drop from 8 to 6 hours, that 40K that we're saving, that's built into the 80K that we would be saving
It'd
by
be
dropping.
80,000.
It'd be on top of the 80.
So it would be, if we went from 8 to 6, we'd be saving 120,000?
If we drop from 8 to 6, that's
Mhm.
80,000. And then if we said, okay, and we don't want them to give us coverage when a deputy's on vacation or sick,
Mhm.
then that would drop us by another 40.
So then I think I'm still confused, but what I'm saying is if we drop from 8 to 6, we save that 80. If we choose to keep paying the 40 for the coverage, to me, it seems like a bad deal. And am I explaining myself correctly why that might be a bad deal or?
All it is that 40 grand is gonna be guaranteeing that during those 6 hours,
Mhm.
7 days a week, a deputy will be here, no matter which deputy is, there will be a deputy here. If we don't, the days that a deputy is sick or on vacation,
Mhm.
we won't have anybody here for those 6 hours.
And that makes sense to me. And I guess what I would be saying is what I would see as a good deal is if we drop from 8 to 6, that 40K would reduce to 33 or whatever. Because we're paying coverage on less time. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, it would definitely be a good discussion point with them.
Okay.
That's not how they figured it, but
sure,
yeah, we were just trying to get some rough numbers,
sure, okay,
so that, so we could present that to the board as an option anyway.
okay.
And then obviously I think next year is estimated, at 370,000, 380,000.
Okay.
So obviously if you cut out all police coverage, then you're gonna drop your levy by that amount of money.
Why does the police fluctuate? What's the unknown here that's causing this to be different from what we estimate?
Do you want to be an officer?
No?
Well, and then I think.
Is
the-
it like if they
staff
get hurt?
starts in
It's
January
staffing,
for
so they had
employees.
to compensate their officers to retain them,
And then they
To
just
keep
charge
them
us out of
competitive-
some
to keep them
unknown
com-
extra?
to keep it competitive with other agencies.
I guess but they're telling us, it's gonna cost this much for 8 hours and then you pay this much for coverage. And then that number changes. Like what's going on? Why is the number change? Like, shouldn't we be able to know this is how much it will cost us this year?
Because we set our levy so early. They're not.
Oh,
they're not
okay.
doing- Everyone else is at the end of the year.
We
Counties
set our
are-
levy before we come to this agreement with the police. Got it.
Yeah, in fact, there's a little thing in here that says estimated 5% increase.
Got it. Okay.
But it's an estimate because we still don't know. They haven't done their budget yet, so.
Okay.
Yeah, we're so far ahead of everybody that it's tough to get their real numbers back. So overall, getting the realistic from all is gonna be the best for everybody.
Mhm.
So no fluff, no inflation. This is what we can run on.
Yeah, so if we could have waited till August to set the levy,
Then
We
we
would-
would know.
then we would know a lot more of how much everything would cost.
Okay, that makes sense.
But because we do it in March,
We guess.
it's a guessing game.
Gotcha. Okay. So it's not like they're just charging us randomly. Like if there's a burglary, it's another 10K.
No.
Okay,
That's why this year the board asked to recess the annual meeting. Is there so many variables throughout this year? If the decision was to drop police,
Mhm.
it would have actually lowered the levy by about $130,000.
Okay,
But right now, if we decided to get rid of police 100%, well, we're gonna be $130,000 to the good because the levy's already set. And we didn't have an opportunity to go back in August or September and adjust the levy down. So that's why I think we're finding the majority of townships do their annual meeting, then they recess the fall. And then they come back and adjust accordingly.
So everybody gets the real numbers.
okay.
All right. So we got some to-dos here. And so those that are going back, talking to the committee members, we want to look at 25 with that 73,250. So look at those budgets, look at operating and capital, just don't hold it to capital. And then the same thing with 26.
So if we're doing this individually, how do we make sure that we're not easy on our own departments and we all come back and realize we didn't ask them to cut enough? Are we setting a blanket amount like this is the minimum you have to go ask them to cut?
Good question.
Let's see how we can cut 10%. That's how you can start your meeting.
Start simple.
Let's see how we can cut this budget by 10% and still give the people of Linwood what they deserve. How can we do that?
Okay.
I don't know any other way. I
So
have
just
no idea any other way.
start with 10%.
Let's see how we can cut 10%.
And maybe there's one department that can do, 15%.
You're right. You're right.
So we'll deal with the nuances next time. But for now, just for simplicity, we're saying we're gonna go to our departments and ask for a minimum of 10%.
Yeah, we can cut 10%.
Okay,
I think my approach is gonna be with like road and bridge is kind of prioritize things. What things can we cut out, but list them in priority, because that way when we're massaging the budget, if we don't have to give up quite as much, maybe we just cut this and this as a lower priority. But if we gotta balance it, I might go 5 or 6 deep into it. You know what I mean? So that we can all get, but I'm gonna look for different options for flexibility depending on what we need to do overall with the budget.
so you're saying you're gonna go into those line items and maybe do a little pre-research and be like, maybe you guys wanna look at these areas?
I don't know about every committee, because I know some committees are really detailed. But like for road and bridge, if I don't go through and be able to explain to them the line items, they're probably not gonna get it, so.
Okay.
So yeah, it's, so I'm gonna go through and do a lot more pre-work, like you said.
Okay,
So I know like cemetery, they don't have, so what they wanted to spend this year, they already spent, but their money is to set aside for the future road for the new section of the cemetery, so. If we can try and keep at least somewhat of a budget for that, that would be great.
The good thing is the 10% is only $600. So that's the good thing with cemetery.
what would the term be? So we brought up the capital. What would the term be for like a plan of? Okay, you're coming back to me and you're saying we're gonna cut capital. I would imagine there has to be some sort of plan with that of how do you justify, like, what are your plans for future purchases? Is there like a term for that? Capital expense plan, something?
You mean like doing like a 3 and 5 year business plan?
No, I mean, like if I go to Parks and Rec and I say, cut 10% and they come back and they say, okay, we're cutting it out of capital. I'd want to know, okay, like, so you're telling me that you're not going to need a new lawnmower? Is there a word for kind of that? Or is it just?
Like I said, I would look at both. I'd look at options for cutting capital and options for cutting operating.
Okay.
I would do them both. that's what my plan is, so that when we come in here, again, depending on what we need, if we're short, I might have to go back to the list and say, okay, well then let's do, instead of $50,000 in gravel, let's do 25. You know, to offset, but that's probably not gonna be the first option that we have, but if we have to dig deep enough, we'll have to go that far.
Sure, okay.
You know, and I'm gonna look at both operating and capital, so. You know, I'm not gonna give up on one or the other.
Sure.
It's my approach anyway.
But I guess like, okay, so I'm seeing 2026 budgeting factors. Like, is it ever laid out, like, the reason we're putting this much into capital is because we expect to buy a fire truck in 6 years?
We need that.
Is there a word for that kind of document or
A capital improvement plan.
capital improvement plan? Okay.
That's what I haven't seen anything documented for, we just put it away.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why you have, $250,000 sitting there with one, which if it's just in case, there's different approaches to it. Because if something does go bad, then we get together and we figure out and we talk to the people who are in charge of the money. How do you want to fix this? I don't like the government being my bank to an
No.
extent. Of we could put a threshold at that or something. Otherwise it just grows and if it's growing, what's the plan? Plan is in case stuff happens. Doesn't sound like a plan.
Yeah. Lots more questions?
A lot of good questions, Sam.
Thanks.
Lots.
Yeah. Good discussion tonight.
I think fire chief is.
Yeah, come on up. I was waiting. I was wondering.
Thank you. So for the fire department, a lot of our projections are based on the year before. So 2024, we never got an ending balance of where we netted out. So for 2025, we never got a substantial or an actual number. We're running off of 357,062. We're assuming that's what it was set at. Am I correct or hasn't that been set yet?
Well, I'm gonna go out on a limb and say that the board hasn't been completely up to speed on all the budget changes as we go. So we're trying to catch up on that too, to be honest with you. I mean, that's why when it was reported where the $73,000 came from in February, that's why 5 supervisors or 4 at that time were explained where it came from, is we didn't have anything to do with it. So we're catching up on that side of it, and now the board's going to become way more active in our budgeting and any changes than we have in the past. So at this point, I can't tell you for sure.
So do we have an ending balance for 2024 on the fire department
That
to
would
help
make it-
us set the 2026 budget?
Mhm.
I mean, again, most of our stuff is done on projections of the year of 24 to set our 26, just like 25 was 23. But going off of cost estimates, cost control, resource allocation and projects, we try to put that all in one bucket, and that's how we set our budget.
Mhm.
So if we know the ending balance of 24, that'll definitely help us with the 26. And we can probably find some cuts.
Sure,
So
for sure.
Get that to you.
I'd appreciate that. And then the 2025, we'll know that because we're almost halfway into the year.
That's in that printout we just got in the board packet here a couple weeks ago, right? Isn't that the one he would
Oh,
need?
where he's at?
Yeah, it shows what was budgeted
Yeah,
for
that was-
25
that
and
was
where
in the
we're at.
board packet. So but to that point, that'll be the ask that Lisa has as well for 25, because based on this, we'd have to compare it to what you proposed. This doesn't show anything. So we'd have to see what in February of 2024 the fire department proposed for 25.
And that was the 357,062. And that's what we're running off of, assuming that that's what was approved.
And definitely need to look at it because it's saying 2025 is 275 for fire on the levy split sheet.
Mhm.
So it's off by quite a bit. So
Yeah, because if we could get those numbers,
we'll
that's
get,
gonna
we'll
help us
get you the
project
year
the
end.
26.
You need the year end. That's what it should come to is the departments and committees should be getting monthly reports.
The levy splits, these numbers, I don't know where they came from.
Yeah.
I don't put any faith in them because when you go over to the detailed Excel spreadsheet that we're looking at,
Yeah.
if you look at police, it doesn't even come close to the same numbers. Year after year where it's actuals, they're not the same. So I don't know, I don't think I'd put a whole lot of faith in the levy split numbers.
So. But we do have year ends, so we'll get you those.
All right. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks, Daryl. All right, final thoughts, questions? Everybody got a plan? Excellent. Billy, anything to add? Good. All right. Now,
Does the clerk know the sheets we want for the committees?
it's
The
the,
worksheets?
yeah, it's the two that just got moved into the T drive, right?
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, so those you can just forward out to the board members. And then would we want to have Billy schedule a meeting for like a month plus out? And get that also scheduled, so, because we're gonna need to do a follow-up to this after,
Early July.
yeah, I would
before
think so,
Sam's
no,
out.
right,
possibly.
no later than the middle of July, I would say.
And would that be like would that be another workshop or would that be a board meeting?
I would say we could get by with a workshop.
Okay.
And get the numbers worked out, because then we'd bring it back to a board meeting for
Okay.
an actual motion.
Okay.
Andy, is that right?
That's what I would do. I would, in terms of scheduling though, we have to schedule the code of conduct one, which should set kind of meetings, because it'd be impactful to be able to minimize the impact on individuals' times.
Mhm.
So to just, come another night, if we can get our board meeting dialed in, we should be able to workshop right after it. And come back we're at an hour and a half right now, come back hour, get better at this, so you're coming with your info and we're not impacting another night of the week for people.
I'd be happy with that.
So we can look at it in terms of that with the schedule.
We're doing pretty good with the meetings. I expected last night was gonna close at 9 and we were out of here, what, a quarter after 7 or so? So. All right, well then let's adjourn this meeting and get on with our evening. And then what we'll probably do is end up scheduling a budget meeting after probably the third board meeting. We'd probably do that after that. That sound right?
After the what?
Third meeting out from last night. That'll give us a month and a half. And then we'll just do a work session following that board meeting. Sound good? Excellent. All right, is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All right. Motion's been made and seconded. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. We are adjourned at 7:30.